Hey everyone, Scott here, and with the reveal of this secret rare in the upcoming Evolution booster, a lot of people have been down on it, especially this active main here. And I wanted to investigate whether people are right in saying that this card is kind of underwhelming. I thought a good way of doing that would be to look at every card you can get with this active main skill here and give it a rating out of 5. So that's what this video is going to be all about. I'm going to be looking at every card with the heroine tag or that can gain the heroine tag, and I'll be giving it a rating out of 5 based on how well it works with this skill here. Then after that, I'll just do a quick summary, maybe talk about any other issues I have with this skill and with this card. So if you don't want to see me rate every card with the heroine tag, you can skip ahead to this time in the video, or you can look at the progress bar down below. It should tell you when the summary is. And yeah, so before I start looking at the cards, maybe I should talk about what this active main here actually does. So you pay 5, you remove this card in your drop area from the game. That's the cost of the skill. And then the effect is choose any number of heroine cards in your hand with energy costs of 5 or less and different card names whose energy costs add up to a total of 10 or less and play them. Then you choose up to one of those cards and it gets plus 5k power for the turn. So let's just jump straight into it and start looking at the heroine cards. And before I start, I just want to say I'm going to try and keep these ratings very short, so this video isn't like 2 hours long. First off here, we have this super combo. I've given it a rating of 2 with an asterisk here. This rating of 2 is assuming that your leader is a World Tournament or heroine card. If it's not, then you're not going to be running this super combo, so it'd basically be a 0 at that point. Yeah, I think if your leader is, say, a heroine card, then this deserves a 2. I mean, it only costs 1 energy, so it's very easy to fit into that 10 total. And then when it plays itself, you can draw a card. Overall, not great, but not terrible either. And then moving on to this pan, I've given it a 1 because it's 5, so that's basically half of the 10 total. All you really get for that much is deflect and 19k power. Neither of these skills you're going to be able to use. The first one is if you play this card with swap, and the second is if you combo with it from your hand. So this isn't really something you want to be playing off of the heroine's legacy skill. And it's a very similar story with this Guinea here. Also 1 because it's 2, it's 10k, and it's 2 skills that you're not going to be able to use. At least not in a heroine heavy deck. And with this being the only heroine Bardoc's Crew card, you're probably not going to be running heroine's legacy in a Bardoc's Crew deck. So yeah, a 1 overall. So next we have this Android 18 here. Again, it's 4, and all you get for that is a blocker with a 15k body. Neither of these skills are going to be relevant if you're playing it off the secret rare. And this launch here, I've given a 1 as well. It's basically 2 just for a 5k blocker. This skill you're not going to be able to use. And this Ribrian here, it's either a 3 or a 2. It depends whether or not you can use this second skill here. You have to have 3 or more green energy to be able to use it. But other than that, it only costs 1, and you're probably going to be able to draw a card when you play it. Next, we have this Cocoonsa here. Costs 1, draws you a card when it's played. So in my book, that would already put it at a 2. But what puts it over the edge is that it also has this active main here. If your opponent has 8 or more cards in hand and 3 or more energy, it basically becomes a 20k attacker with double strike. So that's why I've given it a 3 overall. Then we have this Rosie here. It's 3 energy for deflect and a 15k body. And then when you play it, your opponent drops 2 cards and it gains triple attack for the turn. If this had been triple strike instead, I probably would have rated this a 4. But as it stands, with it having triple attack, it's maybe a bit vulnerable to something like time magic. I think 3 is a fair rating for it. And then we come to this Ribrian here, which is the last of the cards that have the heroine trait actually printed on it. I've given it a 4 with a big asterisk, and the big asterisk is this card can't be played by skills from any area. So it literally cannot be played off of the Secret Rare's active main. Originally I wasn't even going to include this card, but I thought if I didn't, somebody might ask why I didn't include it. So there you go, that's the reason. If it didn't have this skill, it would be a 4. As it stands, it's basically a 0. You can't use it. And so next, every card we're going to be looking at from here on out will only have the heroine special trait if you are using this Bulma leader. This Bulma leader gives all Pan, Bulla, Bulma, Chi-Chi, Videl, My Future, and Android 18s the heroine trait. A few quick points to make is, first off, this leader is black and you can't play non-heroine battle cards, so you need to keep that in mind when we're looking at all the cards from here on out. And finally, I've not included any of the other versions of Bulma, so I've not included the Bulma GT, Bulma Future, or Bulma BR, because I think they would have listed those separately like they have with this My Future. So if you're wondering why there's a few Bulma cards missing, that is why. I don't believe they gain the heroine trait with this leader. So we're going to start looking at them in the order that they are listed here on this Bulma leader. So first up we have Fearless Pan. It would be 3 of the 10, has blocker and barrier, 15k power, and then when it's played you choose all your other red battle cards because your leader isn't going to be red. They gain plus 5k power and double strike for the duration of the turn. I've only rated this a 2 just because there's not a ton of good red heroine cards. Next up we have this skillless Pan here. It's 1 for a 10k body basically. I've given that a 2, which obviously out of 5 is still a pretty low rating. It's not great really, the only thing it has going for it is it's relatively cheap, unlike this next Pan. This Pan is 5 for a 20k body and this skill will not be able to be used. It lets you choose a card with GT in its character name, and the Trunks and Gokus and things like that you cannot run in the Bulma deck. And 5 of the 10 is way too much to be paying just for a 20k body. Next we come to, okay, so I've broken the rating system slightly. I said it would be out of 5, but I didn't say I wasn't going to go all the way to -5, which I think this card is, mainly because it's a super combo that you cannot use its skill. Your leader is not going to be a yellow Goku's lineage, it's a black Bulma. And so because it has the super combo skill, it means if you were to try and run this in the Bulma deck, you would have to take out a super combo that actually works for this one that doesn't. So I think that's a pretty clear -5, just do not even consider running this card. Next up we have this Pan here. It's 1 for a 5k body and a skill that isn't great, so I've just given it a 1. Then this Pan here, it's 2 for a 10k body and a skill that does not work. You can't have a Goku or a Trunks in the deck. Yeah, that's a pretty standard 1 for me. Next up we have Pan, Great Ape Whisperer. So I've given this a pretty high rating compared to a lot of the other Pans. It's only 3 for a 15k blocker, but I think the active main is also a skill you might be able to use. I mean, you could literally just pick this Pan to switch it to active mode once in the game, either after you've attacked with it to attack again or just to have it in active mode so you can activate the blocker. So yeah, I think this a 3. Next up we have another 1-cost Pan that I've given a 1 to because its skill is totally irrelevant and it's only a 5k body. And next up we have another skillless Pan. I've basically just given it the same rating as the other one. One thing to note is I believe you cannot get this and the other skillless Pan off of the active main of this secret rare because they have to have different card names, and these 2 skillless Pans both have the same name, which is just Pan. So here we have another 1-cost Pan that has blocker and can potentially draw you a card when it comes into play if you have a yellow unison. So I've just gone ahead and given it a 2, mainly just for the fact that it's a 1-cost blocker. So next we have this blue Pan. It costs 4, has dual attack and 15k body. That for me was enough to give it a 2. It's permanent here, you're not going to be able to run the Hercule in the Bulma deck. This is just going to be a 4-cost dual attack 15k. Next up we have Awakening Talent Pan. I've given this a split rating. Really it comes down to whether or not you still have life that you can take when this card attacks. If you can, I think it's a 3. If not, it's only a 1. Just comes down to whether this can attack into your opponent as a 15k or just a 5k. Next up we have another 1-cost Pan. Technically you can use both the skills on this. You can choose another red battle card to give it 5k power for the turn and then combo with it from your battle area to draw a card. So similarly to the other 1-cost cards that can draw, I've given it a 2. Next up we have this pan here, and while this can work with the skillless pans we've already seen, you need to combo with it, so it's not very good for playing it into the battle area first before you combo with it. You'd rather just combo with it from your hand. So I've given it a 1 in terms of how well it works with the active main on Heroine's Legacy. Next up we have a 3 cost pan with 10k power and 2 skills that are going to be totally irrelevant. I think that's way overcosted, so it's a 1. Next we move on to the Bullas, and these are all 1s. This here is a 1 cost 4k body with an irrelevant skill. This one here is just 2 for a blocker and a skill that's irrelevant. And this blue Bulla here on the end is the only one I considered giving a higher rating, just because of the servant skill here. It can attack in as a 15k body. Obviously it can only do that once since it doesn't switch itself back to active. But with it being in the gate, I thought you'd probably just want to hold on to it in your hand, so that's why I've given it a 1. And so those are all the Bullas. Now we're on to the Bulmas. This has a 1 just because you can't run any Whis. This is a 2 just because it's 1 energy and it draws you a card. So this Bulma here I gave a 2 because while it is a 4 cost, at the end of the turn you do get to switch one of your energy back to active mode and draw a card. It can give you back 1 of the 5 energy you spent to use the extra card's skill. Plus this is 20k body, so it can attack into your opponent's leader even if it's awakened. Next up we have another yellow Bulma here. It's 3 for 10k body, and when it's played you get 2 of your energy back and draw a card. Maybe I should have given this a 3 actually. This here is another super combo you can't use, don't even consider running it, -5. Then this black Bulma here, I don't think you're going to be running any Dragon Balls. I mean, maybe you could run the 4-star ball if you are going to run the skillless pans. But even then, this puts it in the drop area, not even in your hand, so I think it's pretty safe 1. This Bulma here is another one that you get the skill when you combo with it, so no good for playing off the extra card, it's a 1. Then this red Bulma here from set 8, again, it's another 1 cost that draws you a card, which is enough to give it a 2 in my book. I mean, maybe you can use the active main here on one of the skillless pans that we saw earlier. And then this Bulma here is a 1. It's 3 for 1k body, and the skills are going to be pretty irrelevant in the Bulma deck. Next up we have this red Bulma here from set 10. It's 2 energy for a blocker, and the skill is maybe something that can be activated, so I went ahead and gave it a 2. This Bulma here is another super combo that you're not going to get the effect of. Don't run it, -5. This last Bulma here, I mean, it's a 1 cost that can maybe draw you a card, but it's maybe a bit late in the game to be drawing unisons, and in terms of like a green Saiyan 3 or less, there's not going to be a ton of choices for that in the Bulma deck, so I went ahead and just give it a 1. This Bulma and Vegeta here, I've given it a 1 because 4 I think is too much, especially considering all it's really going to do for you is draw a card. I mean, you could maybe use this skill, but then you're paying another 2 energy on top of the 5 you've already paid. This Bulma here, I've given it a 2 because, similarly to the Bulla we were talking about before, it has Servant, so when it attacks it is technically 20k. I mean, if you're using the extra card skill to try and push for the win in a game, maybe you would want this to be one of the cards you get. In that case it would be 2 of the 10 and you would have a 20k attacking body, and the fact that it doesn't restand is maybe irrelevant, like I say, if you're trying to go for game, so I went ahead and gave it a 2. And then this last Bulma on the right here, I mean, it's 1 energy and it draws you a card when you play it, so I'll give it a 2. This Bulma here is going to be terrible because your leader's not going to be a Whis, and other than that it's 1 energy for a 1k body, terrible. Then we have another unusable super combo, don't run this. And then this Bulma on the right, I've also given a 1. Funnily enough, this is maybe a card you would consider running in the Bulma deck, just because this can actually find the extra card, but it's maybe not something you want to actually play off the active main. This Bulma here, I've given it a 2 because it's only 1 of the 10. It has blocker and it has an auto that you can actually get the effect of. It's not going to be a massively impactful effect, but compared to some of the cards we've already looked at least you can actually get the effect on this one. This Bulma here is another 1 energy that draws you a card, so that's pretty solid 2 in my book. Maybe you would use the active main here, but then you have to spend another energy on top of the 5 you've already spent. It's a solid 2. This Bulma here I've given a 2 because it's only 1 energy and it can maybe switch one of your opponent's battle cards to rest mode. This really was on the borderline of being either a 1 or a 2. This Bulma here, your leader is not going to be a Shenron, so you can't get its effect, otherwise there's one cost for a 1k body, which is bad, don't run it. And this last of the Bulmas here, I've given it a 2 just because it's 1 energy and it has blocker. Then we move on to the Chi-Chis. This one here I've given a 1 just because the only targets are going to be either more copies of this or some of the pans we've already looked at, which aren't very good anyway. This Chi-Chi here also gets a 1 just because you're not going to be able to use this auto here, which is the whole point of the card really. This Chi-Chi on the right here, in terms of red-green multicolour cards, I don't think there are any red-green heroine cards. And either way, this is another one of the cards you only get the effect when you combo with it. So no good with the secret rare. Then this Chi-Chi here, another super combo you can't use, don't use it. This Chi-Chi here is going to be 2 for a blocker basically. That's not good enough, so I've given it a 1. And then this Chi-Chi on the right, you're not going to be able to run the corresponding Goku. So this is also a 1. Then we have yet another super combo you shouldn't be using. Then we have this Chi-Chi here, who again is a 1 cost card that draws you a card when you play it. But then it also has this other auto here. And if you are playing against a deck that is going to want to switch your energy to active with counter skills, then this card would be a 3. If you're not, it's only a 2. So this Chi-Chi on the right, very similar to the Bulma we looked at before. It's 2 for a card that can attack in for 20k. But then this also has a bit more of a relevant skill of it can switch on your opponent's battle cards or units into rest mode. So maybe if they have something with blocker on the board, this auto can really help you out with that. So I decided to give it a 3, but maybe that's being a bit generous. So next up we move on to the Videls. This one on the left here is just 2 energy for a blocker. The permanent's irrelevant, so that's a 1. This Great Saiyan Man 2, which is technically a Videl, you cannot run the corresponding Great Saiyan Man because it's not going to be a heroine, so this would just be 2 energy for 10k attacker, which isn't good enough. I've given it a 1. Then this Videl on the right, I think 2 is too much to be paying for this skill. This Videl here, you're not going to be able to run any of these Gohan, Gotens or Trunks, so it's another 1. This Videl here, your leader is going to be black, not red, so it's yet another 1. Then this Videl here on the right is only really a 3 if you're going to have a green unison in play, otherwise it's only really a 2 for a 1 energy blocker. This Videl here, similarly to the Bulla, you're going to want to keep it in your hand since it's a negate. This Gohan and Videl, it's going to be 2 energy just for a 15k body, the skill's irrelevant. In my book, that's not good enough, so it's just a 1. Now, this Great Saiyan Man 2 here is pretty interesting. Works with skillless cards, and as we've seen, there's a couple of those pans. So maybe you can get this top skill to go off. This second skill is just another way of playing it. But even if you can get this top skill to go off, really, I think it's still only a 2. Then we come on to the last Videl. Again, you're not going to be able to run the Hercule, and the pan that it can get you, it gets it at the end of the turn, which is no good really, so this is a 1. Next up we have the My's and My Futures. These are going to be kind of mixed together. And now I'm looking at it, this is My Youth, so this may not even gain the heroine special trait, so ignore that one. It just came up when I searched for My on the official website. This My over here is 2 for a blocker and an irrelevant permanent. That's a 1 in my book. This My here on the right, again, maybe you could run like the 4-star Dragon Ball, but probably not, so it's a 1. Then this My here on the left is another super combo you can't run. This again is another My Youth that I'm only just realizing probably doesn't get the heroine tag, but even then it wouldn't be able to be played off the extra card, and even then again, even if it did, I don't think it would be very good anyway. This My on the right here, maybe it should be a 2 because it's 1 energy and it will probably get you a card to your hand. But there is the chance you might miss, so I went ahead and gave it a 1. This My on the left here, I think I meant to give it a 1 because you're not going to be able to use this skill here, so it's just 2 energy for a 15k body. This My here, again, if you're going to be using the secret rare skill, maybe it's a bit late to be trying to grab a unison, and other than that I can only grab a Trunks, which you're not going to be able to run, so it's a 1. This My here is just another 1 cost 10k skillless, so like the pans, I've just given that a 2. Again, really unimpressive. Then finally, this final My is basically the same as the Chi-Chi we looked at earlier, just in red. So it's the 3 if you're against a deck that wants to switch energy with counter skills, otherwise it's only a 2. And so last up we have all the Android 18s. Over here is yet another super combo you're not going to get the effect of. This Android 18 here is an interesting one. With this top skill here, it really is just going to come down to how many Android 18s you're actually running in the deck as to whether or not you're going to consistently be able to draw one. And for the second auto, in terms of green-blue multicolor heroines, there's only this Android 18 here, which you should not be running. So you're probably not going to be able to activate the skill. I mean, it can work off of blue-green extra cards, but I don't know if you're going to be running any of those in Bulma. Then this Android 18 on the right here is another one you get the effect when you combo with it, so not great for the extra card skill, so it's a 1. So this Android 18 and Krillin is pretty good. I mean, it's 4 energy, but you do get a 20k body, and you'll probably just be making your opponent drop a card, but I think that's good enough to earn it a 3. This Android 18 here is 3 for a 20k body, and you draw 2 cards. That, again, I think is another solid 3. And this Android 18 on the right is 3 for a 9k body. Your leader isn't going to be a cell, so that's a 1. This Android 18 on the left I've given a 3 simply because it's a 20k body, has barrier, and it's only 3 energy. The permanent's not going to be relevant because your leader isn't green. This Android 18 here is 3, a 15k body. Your leader isn't going to be an android, so it's just a 1. This Android 18 here gets 3 because it's 20k body with crit and barrier for 3 energy. I think that's decent. I mean, 3 obviously out of 5 still isn't a great score, but still one of the better cards we've seen so far. This Android 18 on the left is a 2 just because it costs 5. I think that's a bit much for double strike, 20k power, and making your opponent drop a card. This Android 18 is a 1 because it's 3 for a 15k body and a skill you're not going to be able to activate. This Android 18 on the right here is 3 energy, critical, 15k power. So I've given that a 2. Pretty standard, I think. So under your skin here is 20k body with a decent skill here. So that's a 2. Infinite energy here is another one that you only get the skill when you combo with it. So it's a 1. And Secret Treaty here is yet another one where you cannot play the corresponding Hercule. So it's a 1 again. This Android 18 on the left is a 1 because again you're going to have a blue-green multicolor card in your energy, and even then you get the effect when you combo with it. And then the last card we're going to look at is this Android 18. It's a 2 just because it's 2 energy, 15k body, and a skill that maybe you can activate on subsequent turns. And that is it. That is all the cards that either have heroine or can gain heroine. So now let's move on to the summary. So to summarize, I mean, there are no good heroine targets for this skill. I didn't rate any of the heroines we looked at a 5, and rightly so. I think I didn't want to give a card a 5 out of 5 just because it's the best of a bad bunch. The one card that I would have given a 4 to cannot even be used off of this skill, so that doesn't even count. And then when you start to get down to the cards that I gave a 3, I mean, at that point, they're not even really good. I mean, 3 is average. I mean, it's literally middle of the road. But the one thing that we do need to keep in mind with this skill going forward is that they could print better targets in the future. So with that in mind, what would a 5 out of 5 rating heroine card even look like? Basically, it would look like one of these cards I have in front of you here. Just something with like 25, 30k power, with relevant keyword skills like triple strike, critical, double strike, something like that. And with autos that also are going to have some kind of effect on the game, like all of these cards do. So really, all they need to do is just look at any of these cards, print something very similar to them, and just make them heroines, make them Pans, Android 18s, or one of the maidens. And just make them 5 costs, so that all you're really doing with this skill is paying 5 to get 2 cards of this kind of caliber. I mean, it would be a totally different prospect if you were paying 5 for 2 cards that are this good. That obviously would make the skill a lot better. Although that's not to say that the only issue with this skill is the targets that it has. There are a few other issues with it. So this right here, I would say, are the biggest obstacles to this card being good. Number 1 is a lack of deflect on any of the targets that we currently have. I mean, you don't really want to be paying 5 and then having all the cards be bounced back to your hand for free off your opponent's God Sealing technique. At that point, you've basically paid 5 to do nothing. And then there's also the fact that it's inherently a go wide kind of skill. Since they can each only individually have a maximum cost of 5, that means you're always going to be paying at least 2 cards off of this skill. So obviously when you're attacking him with multiple cards in a turn, you're going to be more vulnerable to something like Topo, even Dormant Potential Unleash, maybe even Flying Nimbus. So even if they do print better targets, that is still going to be an issue with this skill. There is also the fact that it costs 5. I mean, right now in the game, paying 5 for a skill is very rare that even happens. Really, the only card I could think of that where you actually pay 5 or more for it is this Fu Shrouded in Mystery. And even then, it's only played in certain type of decks, ones that usually either have some kind of stall or some kind of ramp. And currently there's nothing like that in the Heroine archetype or even any cards that you could theoretically run within that Black Bulma deck. And that again is another big obstacle for this skill. And then lastly, there is the opportunity cost of even running this as the secret rare in your deck. If you do, you're going to be missing out on any of these better secret rares. And that might actually be one of the biggest factors of why I don't think this card is necessarily going to be seeing a ton of play going forward. At least not in the immediate future. So yeah, that is it for this video. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know what you think a good heroine target for this skill would look like in those comments down below, and thanks for watching.